Hey, good morning or good afternoon. It's 12 o'clock noon right now on the East Coast. I'm in close to Philadelphia. Anyway, I hope you guys are doing well. Had a good weekend. Welcome to Mondays with Moss. The program for the last year has basically been about really creating a life worth having. One that you feel successful, you're accomplishing something, and you feel safe, okay? And this year has not been a year that most people are feeling safe with the political unrest, the economic unrest, the racial divide, and the political chaos. Anyway, we're moving into a new presidency, and hopefully that will create some stability. Well, recently, as some of you realize, I've been doing a new series called 52 Things You Know, 1 week at a time. I find that often when I work with my clients, their lives can be complicated. When they leave the therapy session, it can be hard for them to remember, what am I working on today? So when I wrote this second book, 52 Things You Know, which can be found on Amazon, hopefully, I thought about, well, maybe each week we need to focus on something in particular. It could be realistic optimism, could be curiosity, could be handling conflict. So over the last week, I started this conversation on conflict. And I think really the title of this series on conflict could be yours, mine, and ours. Last week I talked about conflict from my point of view, if I had a problem. Today is coming from your point of view, if you have a problem. And next week is if you and I had a problem together. So it's yours, mine, and ours. By the way, thank you for a tremendous response last week. I think almost 800 people checked in. Love to get some likes if you like this series. Appreciate that. So last week I talked about Bob and Joni. Bob had a problem. So I had a problem. Make you believe I'm Bob. So Bob became very emotionally triggered. He's going over a bill, just to remind you. And his wife was on the phone talking to their daughter, who was struggling with some safety issues in California due to the COVID virus. Anyway, Bob comes rushing in, waving the bill, screaming at his wife. He took on what we call a hard approach, hard startup, not a soft one. He got very emotional, very critical, and really triggered his wife. He was triggered, she got triggered. It was like he had poison ivy, he gave it to her. Okay, so we also talked last week about what is conflict, and there are 3 times to deal with it: before the problem, during the problem, which is the most difficult, and then later when you get a chance to catch your breath, and some actions that you could take. Well, today we're looking at when the other person is upset, Joni in this case. By the way, what's harder for you, giving or receiving? When you have an upset, is it easier or harder for you to go to the person and say, hey, listen, I'm struggling with something. I'm upset. I'm angry. I need to pick a bone with you, however way you want to present it. Or is it harder when someone comes to you and says, hey, I got a bone to pick with you. Hey, I'm upset about something. So useful to think about. I think for me, I'm probably more uncomfortable when someone comes at me. I can feel the tension in my body. I can feel the emotional triggers. I have to work pretty hard to slow down my breathing, keep myself stabilized, and just be respectful and compassionate, and take an interest in what the person is saying before I feel like pulling my gun out of my holster, so to speak. You shoot me, I shoot you, okay? So we have a case study now. Same thing, Bob and Joni. Joni's upset, okay, because Bob rushed into the kitchen and really hit her pretty hard. She's actually feeling quite hurt and angry. It's about 2 hours after the phone call. She's been kind of banging the dishes around. Nothing's been happening. Bob hasn't come back to apologize. She really feels humiliated, feels belittled. After all, she was on the phone talking to her daughter. She was worried, and she was embarrassed that Bob yelled at her like she was a little kid. Well, in the meantime, Bob's gone back to the office to get himself grounded, the office in the house, that is. He actually thinks about, hey, wait a minute, I was in therapy. I saw my therapist a week ago, and we were talking about emotional triggers and Bob being reactive. he realized his wife was not the problem. His underlying problem was the fear of not having enough in his life, a loss of safety stemming probably from the difficulty his parents had when he was growing up. So when I spoke to Bob as his therapist, I had cautioned him that he would probably get triggered again from his program. I said to him, look, you have a program, you're wired to be insecure, and there'll be certain triggers. Anytime you do not feel safe, you're going to have a rush of adrenaline and cortisol, and you may act really quite badly. So he remembered something else we talked about, which is human beings are programmed and we're reaction machines. We just react. Most of us are not taught mindfulness. We're not taught self-regulation. We're not taught how to set an intention, how to create a possibility for a relationship. We're just wired as if we were still 5, 7, or 14. Okay? So and Bob thought, last week, how did he behave? He said he behaved like a 14-year-old, out of control. He realized he lost his intention. He was not curious. He had no compassion, no realistic optimism. Anyway, how would you handle it? If your partner, in this case Joni, approaches you before you can get a chance to clean it up, particularly the way I'm going to describe the way she approached him. So the next time I saw Bob, when he came back, I said, so Bob, what happened? He said, well, I went back to my home office, started to calm down, started to do some breathing, and I remembered, my God, I remember our conversation, that I'm responsible for our relationship, that I'm 100%, and we could talk about that later. It's not 50-50, we both are 100%. Joni's 100% and Bob was 100%. So what happened, though, he recounted as he was calming down, Joni comes barging into his home office and basically did what we call a tit for tat. Something like this. I can't believe you're a grown-up man, you acted the way you did. You're a spoiled goddamn child. It's always about you, your money, money, money. Not ours, yours. We make a lot of money, and I hate it when you blame and attack me. And when you tell me we're going bankrupt. We're not going bankrupt, God damn it. You know this isn't the first time. What are you doing in your therapy, by the way? Is your therapist doing anything for you? So when he said that to me, I kind of felt a little anxious. I said, oh God, maybe we're not doing very well. But I will describe Bob's response to this in a moment. But first, hi Steve, hi Paul. I want to just kind of describe a couple distinctions that would be important to know. Our typical default reactions under stress, tension, and criticism, because Bob was being criticized, was to get defensive, hurt, angry, and go on fast track. Fast track thinking is when your back brain, your survival brain, you get emotionally hijacked. And you stop thinking about, well, I'm in this long-term relationship. How can I handle this problem so I don't get nasty, don't do damage? Fast track thinking is just survive at any cost, protect yourself. So most of us, when we get upset, criticized, under stress, we get onto fast track thinking. Emotions flood our thinking brain. We don't act very thoughtfully. We often can lose a connection. I have one client, whenever he gets angry, he feels totally terrible afterwards. He says, if I love my wife, how can I be so angry towards her? Well, I think when you're angry and you get emotionally hijacked, you lose love. You lose your connection. So he realized often we lose our intention. So then it's followed when we calm down by guilt, shame, or we justify. We convince ourselves, I had a right to feel that way. Afterwards, she spent too much money at whatever store. Also, another distinction besides our typical default reactions is to understand the nature of upsets. The nature of an upset has 3 parts. One is you have a complaint. You spend too much money. Under the complaint is a frustration or a hurt. I worry about not having enough. But what's really important, what's at the very bottom, the source of the nature of an upset, is an unmet need or desire. I want to feel safe and I want to feel connected. Now, if one would have a powerful conversation, not a defensive, default, upsetting conversation, 3 things would happen. Number 1, you would move an agenda forward. You'd be further ahead at the end of the conversation than when you started. In the conversation, Bob and in the kitchen with his wife, Joni, they did not end up further ahead. They ended up further behind. Number two, you would learn something, and you would build trust and safety. Now let's see if this conversation between Joni and Bob leads to anything about having a powerful conversation. I think one of the, I came across this article about 3 months ago. I spoke about it in one of the posts, called the 3 A's. 3 A's is an easy model to think about if you want to regain control of yourself. Number one, become aware. Be observant and notice what's going on. Notice you lost it. Number two, be accountable. Take responsibility for what you did and recreate your intention. And three, take actions. What kind of actions could you take? So this is where the rubber meets the road. Get grounded like a catcher. Just imagine you're a baseball catcher and the ball's coming at you at 90 miles an hour. You want to get grounded. You want to have your chest protector on, your face guard, and you want your mitt up there to catch the ball. If you're not grounded, you get distracted and turn away and not really grounded and focused, the ball could hit you in the face, hit you in the chest, or someplace else. So you want to get grounded. So as the criticism or the upset comes at you, you want to catch it in a way that's you're safe. A good idea is to listen, let your partner vent, and don't interrupt. Sometimes the emotion just has to wear out. It will take like 2, 3, no more than 5 minutes. If you stop talking, let your partner vent. But you have to let her vent and vent in a particular way. You listen. You every once in a while say, I hear you. I can see how angry you are. Yep, I got it. You thought I was a real jerk. I humiliated you. You really feel terrible. And then you summarize. You squeeze the lemon. You want to say, tell me more. Is there anything else you want to say about me? Sometimes I act like a jerk. I get it. Anything else you want to say? Give her permission to throw the ball at you at 100 miles an hour. Because if you're giving her permission, or your partner permission, you have control over the conversation. Then when it's all done, take your turn to talk. Hey, can I tell you what was going on for me and what triggered me and what I really need? You're not the problem. You're not the problem. I think I discovered something. I think I learned something. So what did Bob do? I think what Bob did was he actually, and when Joni came into the room, he remembered something we had talked about called compassionate conversations, compassionate conflict resolution. He created an awareness of that he lost it, set him, he's accountable, he got grounded, he recreated his intention, which was to be compassionate and curious about his upsets. And not just believe the movie in his mind that his upsets mean that he's right. So he got grounded, recreated his intention for compassion, and took total responsibility for what he did. He realized he lost it. And these are some of the actions. He listened with compassion. He looked at her, then grimaced and made faces. He listened and he just watched. He said, hey, I hear you. He got close enough. And I think at one point he even touched her hand. He apologized and took responsibility. As she finished, he said, hey, Joni, I'm really sorry. I totally lost it. You're not the problem. My problem is I get anxious when I see a bill. If I don't have the money to easily pay for it, I think it just triggers me into an old childhood fear. I really get it, which is we grew up with very little money. I remember my mom always being anxious, and I think I just have that in my bones. So when I see a bill, I don't think to myself, it's just a bill. I say to myself, we're in danger. So I'm really sorry for that, because that's the problem, the program in my head, the movie in my mind. He listened with compassion, apologized, took responsibility. Again, he shared with Joni what he learned when he got reflected. So this is what I'm learning in therapy. And he shifted the conversation away from right, wrong to getting reconnected and how to take better care of each other. Bottom line, in this conversation, which was much better than the first one, is that human beings get upset. We all get upset. You cannot stop. It doesn't matter how hard you work. It doesn't matter how much you pray or go to therapy. You will get upset. You will get triggered. Also, we're reaction machines. We're programmed. We're just going to have a reaction. It's automatic because when our nervous system or the survival part of your brain feels threatened, it's going to go into a stress reaction. Usually when we're upset, we're going to do either we're going to attack, we're going to avoid, we're going to accommodate. We talked about also, bottom line is, there's a hard and a soft startup. Hard startup is when you attack. I can't believe you. Soft startup is, hey, I'm struggling with something. Can we talk? Is this a good time? Another bottom line is, often when we're upset, we blame others. You know, it's hard to take responsibility and say, I'm really upset. I don't know why, I'm confused, and take the time to really examine and reflect. Instead, we blame the other person. You this, you that. Bottom line, if you want a good relationship, particularly with your spouse, I suggest you take 100% responsibility for managing the relationship. Managing the relationship. If she's upset, you're upset. Part of growing up to be able to say, well, there's an upset here. She's not the problem. I'm not the problem. Whatever the upset is the problem. But we've got to dig deep to get to what's the underlying need or desire. If we can do that, maybe we can move to, number one, cleaning up the upset. I'm sorry, they lost control. Have a growth mindset, learn from the experience, and get a little closer and better in touch with each other. So that's it for today. But next week, I'm going to talk about we have a conflict. So the first week was I have a problem. Second week today, you have the problem, Joni coming to me. Next week, let's say Bob and Joni both get triggered simultaneously. They both have a conflict and they're in disagreement. So we're going to return to Bob and Joni as our imaginary couple and see what we can do, see what they can do. I'll have another a session or two with Bob. Joni's not in therapy, and we'll see what happens. So I wonder, in the meantime, what do you think the unmet need is for Joni? For Bob, it's safety and for being connected, feeling connected to his wife. Because whenever he grew up and his mom and dad fought, there was no connection. They would threaten divorce, scared the hell out of him. The fear of financial lack of money scared him, and the fear of being a little kid being abandoned by his parents terrified him. So that was what he needed was safety and connection. But what does Joni need? Okay, we'll find out next week. In the meantime, if you're interested in learning more about this, what I'm talking about is based upon my first two books, Navigating for Success, which you can get on Amazon in Kindle form, and number two, 52 Things You Need to Know. I have a few copies available. If you want them, contact me. I'll get it out to you. And I'm going to get on Amazon, see if I can reinstate. Somehow we lost the connection to 52 Things You Need to Know. I'm not sure why, but I'm not particularly upset about it. I'm just going to deal with it. And I'm going to do a soft startup, not a hard startup. All right, folks, we have an election coming up. I hope it's not an election. We have an inauguration coming up. Hope you guys are safe. Hope you stay connected to whomever's in your life. Be well. Get your catcher's mitt up because something will probably come at you this week. Hopefully you can learn a little from my presentations and field it. And watch your program. Watch your reaction machine take you over. Be very interesting. If it does, let me know. In the meantime, if you like this, hit like. Okay, guys? Bye. See you soon.